Donald Trump, the man, the legend, the only man who can decide to run for president when everyone else has decided, you know, this guy won't make it, he's a loser, comes back, proves a point, and guess what? Today he gets sworn in as the 47th president of the United States of America. Amazing, and congratulations to Donald Trump.
The world is fast-paced and sometimes you miss the action. What perspectives do you have? What is the truth? Is the world at war? Join me, Sarah Mwangi, as we make sense of the information overload.
So Trump comes in at a time when America is sort of divided for various reasons, and a lot of things are going on across the world. And everyone is actually watching to see how Trump takes up, especially looking at the fact that America has been involved in these wars, especially the Russia-Ukraine war. And during his campaigns, he gave various promises. One of them was that he's going to end the Russia-Ukraine war within 24 hours. So after today, we are watching to see if that happens. Of course, logically, 24 hours is not possible. Next thing he said, we would have peace in the Middle East. I mean, we've started seeing some sort of progress in terms of promoting peace. And also, the greatest of all for him is make America great again. And I think that is one of the things every American is looking forward to see their country become great again. Because they don't, as for Republicans, they don't look at Biden as someone who made America what they had or met the expectations which they had initially. So that's one of the key things that Trump, everyone, basically the world is looking to see how Trump deals with that. Key thing we're also wondering, and personally for me, I'm looking at is to see if Trump is coming in to make a new world order. And what do I mean by world order? Will he end the wars? If he ends these different wars and promotes peace across these different nations, what happens next? Will Trump say goodbye to Europe as he disengages from European wars? Because essentially, from what we've seen, he's not pro this European support for various reasons. But then again, it's a bit of a task for him because you can't just wake up and say we are against this. Depending, again, most of these nations go to war for personal interests. So for Trump, at this moment, I think he doesn't see the value that funding the European wars gives. For instance, for the war between Ukraine and Russia, from the beginning, he's been against the funding. He's even been against Ukraine joining NATO, and he even threatened that when he becomes president, I don't know if it's a threat or it was a proper statement, presidential, that he will withdraw the funding. And then, you know, for US being the biggest funder of NATO, that would be a problem or a challenge to NATO, because if, for instance, Germany and US withdrew, would NATO still stand up? Would these nations be willing to put in money when essentially there is no value they are getting? That's something to watch out for. For now, Trump says they've spent more money on wars that do not add any value to the United States, while essentially what they should be looking at is for things that interests that meet America first. So unless there's a value that he feels America gets, I think Trump is going to cut this relationship. And of course, if they decide to keep the wars on, I think for America it will get to a point where they'll be just like, you know what, it's not any value addition to us, and so that will end. Something else is the NATO factor. NATO continues to fund to fund Ukraine in the Russia-Ukraine war, and as I mentioned, America is the biggest funder for NATO. Of the 27 EU members, 22 are also members of NATO. NATO has been supporting Ukraine in the war against Russia since the beginning. That's in 2022. If America withdraws, then if today Trump, after getting sworn in, makes a declaration that we're not going to support this, what happens next? Will these other nations continue funding or just helping Ukraine fight in the war? I don't think they will. Number two, if he decides that there is no funding, what happens between the relationship between the US and Russia? Because Trump and President Putin are looked as people who really fight for interests for their countries. And they have a relationship sort of that works, but it's very interesting again, and it's usually very hard to tell which side they stand for or what they stand for, but bottom line, they stand for interests. President Zelensky Apparently, he was not even invited for the inauguration. So could this be a sign that Trump is really not into this funding? Because, for a country that has been funding Ukraine not to invite him for his inauguration, that says a lot. It would be interesting if indeed, let's say, the Russian president was invited, which, again, he was not also there. But you see, for Russia, that's neither here nor there, because now for Ukraine, this was their major supporter. So if your major supporter does not invite you for the inauguration of the next government, that means there's a sign somewhere that Zelensky should be seeing. And I think to a point, he should be worried about that. Will now now that he's sworn in, will he start negotiations with President Putin and maybe Xi Jinping? Because these are mighty guys. Will Trump end the war by saying no to Ukraine joining NATO? That'd be one of the conditions, because this is what Russia had said. Like, if you want us to do half peace deals, one of the key things was Ukraine will not join NATO. And why? Because they do not need anyone invading their buffer zone. They do not want any of these NATO nations close to their buffer zone, because, they're neighbors with Ukraine. So if they allow, let's say, the US or Germans to put a base there, it means if a war ever comes up between the two nations, they're an easy target. So do you think, I feel like he might say, like Trump might say that NATO is not negotiable for Ukraine. And now with that, it begs the question, what will be the other demands that Trump will give to Putin? Because President Putin has also to look at the conditions. And conditions here basically just mean what benefits Russia, or what is the value that Russia gets. What are the interests? If the interests are protected, I think he will move. But if the main interests that Russia has are not protected, that will also be something that is not negotiable. Remember, Trump looks at Putin as a very influential guy in the political space, and I'm sure he actually looks up to him and the Chinese president. Something else that would be interesting is the relationship between the US and China. One, because Xi Jinping is very influential economically, that's for sure. Trump has put a lot of trade tariffs that affect the Chinese-US business, but will he continue to push this, or will he want to have a negotiation with China for the interest of both countries? The key, I think, where we should look at it this way. Just a few hours after the Biden law on banning TikTok had come to implementation, a few hours later, Trump says, no, we will make a declaration and we will discuss and see how we can have TikTok working in the US, despite the fact that there were issues raised of security concern and spying by China, spying on US. He said, we can work out and see if we can buy maybe shares, or we can agree on the shareholding of TikTok, so that then we are on a position where we all work and gain. So you see, if already he doesn't want to lose this TikTok, which is one of the apps, and also maybe because he got a lot of very young voters who are on TikTok, so maybe with this is a sign that he will want a better relationship with Xi Jinping. That's something to watch out for. The solutions that he will give, not sure as yet. For instance, this is just a case scenario, but it's a theory. If, for instance, China went to war with Russia, or US engaged with war with any other nation, how they overcome that? I think he will try to convince Putin to sign a peace deal, so that in case of anything, they are on the same side, and they would easily support each other when there is war. For China, the same. China and Russia really never want to be at war. One, they are neighbors, and when you're neighbors, you really do not want to have any war happening, because one, you will have so much to lose in terms of the net effect across. Number two, you don't want to go to war because you're not sure between China and Russia who would win. Very tricky situation to be. Both presidents, I don't think any of them would want to go to war, because now if you lose to your neighbor, that means you lose all the power that you've had across. As it is, we cannot judge who wins. But I don't think they want to put that test to life. Also, the fact that they would lose so many people because both countries neighbor each other, both countries have the capability, I don't think that want to do. Number two, that is very key for promoting peace between US and China, is the fact that China has been spreading its influence in Mexico and the larger Latin American world. These are nations that border the US. So you can imagine how the US feels knowing that China has a lot of establishment in Mexico. Remember, during the first term of President Trump, he actually suggested that they would build a wall, so they separate Mexico and the country, and also cut on the immigrants that were getting to the US. Well, that did not come to fruition per se. So knowing that there's this country that is building its stronghold in Mexico, and what does that mean for US? It means, for instance, this is also theoretical. If one day, let's say China went to war with the US, do you know the buffer zone for US is already cut because they are right there in Mexico? What would this mean for US? It would mean if it is a serious war, that China would easily attack the US from their neighborhood, that is Mexico. So I think this is one of the things why Trump really wants to get into a peace deal with China and just find a way of the two countries working, because the trade relations with China has placed it at the heart of, like it's becoming hard for the US. And if China is to go to war, infiltrating that space, buffer zone, is a danger. Looking back, the idea of wanting to ban TikTok because of spying. Now imagine if they're in Mexico, TikTok is available, and they really want to, the idea of spying is coming up. I don't think America would make such a claim without really having some information about it. I feel like the Chinese would be, yes, they would be spying. And by the time America came up with this statement, they must have seen something on the back end. And I actually don't judge them for feeling their safety is at risk. So it is something interesting to look forward how President Trump will deal with these two relationships. Also, just seeing how him knowing that Russia and China are almost quote unquote good friends. One, because they are neighbors. Two, because they're also part of BRICS, and these two nations really want to do away with the dollar, considering they are like the top, the creme de la creme of BRICS nations. So I think President Trump will really want to work with these two nations, find a balance. Like, he'll just call Xi Jinping, talk to him, tell him, we'll do this and this. On the other hand, he will call the Russian president, Putin, tell him, we'll do this and this, we'll help you with this, we'll help you with this. So basically, it's a divide and conquer, but here being conquer meaning he has a stable relationship with both nations, but not affecting how the two nations relate. So yeah, that's what we're looking for. These are some of the most controversial and unexpected things that we're looking to experience or see how they develop with the Trump presidency, second term. So yeah, that's it for now. We wish Trump the very best in his second term, and the world is actually just watching how this term goes. It is Donald Trump. Let's watch and wait. Let's all maybe support. I hope he stands for America first. He's been pushing that to make America great again. And I hope this time he's able to make America great again by all means, yeah? Thanks for watching. Share with us in the comments section what you feel and think or expect from the Trump second presidency term, yeah? See you on the next episode.
The world is fast-paced and sometimes you miss the action. What perspectives do you have? What is the truth? Is the world at war? Join me, Sarah Mwangi, as we make sense of the information overload.